Hello, and thank you for joining us for the final mock presidential debate. Each candidate will get 1 minute and 30 seconds to answer their question, and will have the opportunity to rebuttal back with an opponent. The overall goal of this debate was to inform our audiences of the issues as represented by parties before you all go to the election polls tomorrow. My name is Mark Solis. I'm a Springdale High School alum, class of 2018. I'm currently a University of Arkansas junior, majoring in psychology and criminology. I've done personally 4 years of mock trial and debate events. Now, a reminder before we get started that all of these roles were assigned and do not necessarily reflect the personal stances and beliefs of the individual students. So, let's have the candidates introduce themselves according to their party. First, the Republican Party.
My name is Janet Huerta.
The Democratic Party.
My name is Julian Trejo.
And the Libertarian Party.
My name is Haley O'Neill.
And with that, let's get started. We will begin with the issues surrounding the election. The first question will be posed to Julian Trejo. Your question is, many states have recently changed laws to allow citizens who are convicted felons to vote. In 2018, Florida voters approved an amendment that gave voting rights back to 400,000 felons who had served their sentences. Do you believe that those who commit serious crimes should regain their right to vote in future elections?
Well, the Sentencing Project, which is an advocacy group for de-incarceration in the United States, estimates that over 5 million people will be prohibited from voting in this upcoming election because of their convictions. Think about that. Over 5 million people in this country have no say in our democracy. Felons have already served their punishment. That's why they're free. So why strip them of the right to vote? Life as a felon is already hard enough, from the increased difficulty in finding a job and the social prejudice that looms over their head everywhere they go, and just in general, the increased difficulty in adapting to the free world once again. So why make life difficult for felons even harder by prohibiting them from voting? I'm advocating for freed felons to vote, not people in prison. People in prison are still serving their punishment, so they should be stripped of their right to vote. However, felons who are released from prison have already completed their punishment. Justice has already been served. People convicted of truly heinous crimes like rape and murder will probably spend the rest of their lives in prison. They'll never get the opportunity to vote. However, even in freedom, only certain felons should be prohibited from voting, such as those who are murderers and rapists or child predators, because they have committed the worst crimes possible, and we should take away those rights. But others who have served their punishment and are free for less minor crimes should keep their right to vote because they've served their punishment.
Thank you, Mr. Trejo. And now we're going to hear a rebuttal from Janet Huerta.
Yes, life as a felon is hard. Maybe they shouldn't have become felons. We don't let everyone vote because there are certain minimum objective standards of responsibility, trustworthiness, and commitment to our laws that we require of people before they can be trusted in a role in our government. Children, non-citizens, the mentally incompetent, and those who have committed serious crimes against their fellow citizens do not meet those standards. Lawbreakers should not help elect our country's lawmakers.
Thank you. And now, your response to that, Mr. Trejo.
Well, my response to that was she said that people who have committed serious crimes shouldn't be able to vote. And like I said, I agreed with that. But felons who committed minor crimes like stealing, which is a felony, should be able to vote. She also said that people who are not allowed to vote aren't voting because they're irresponsible. So by saying that, you're saying that just because somebody committed a crime and has owned up to it and served their punishment is no longer responsible. I don't agree with that. I think people can become better and rehabilitated and become responsible, law-abiding citizens once again, once they've served their punishment. So they should be able to vote.
Okay, and a final response from Janet Huerta.
Voting is a right belonging to all law-abiding citizens. When citizens become no longer law-abiding, then it is necessary that we take away their voting rights.
Thank you. And with that, we're going to move on to our next question. It's going to be posed to Haley O'Neill. The U.S. Constitution provides for an electoral college to decide the presidential election. This gives each state a number of votes that will go to the candidate who wins that state, whether he or she wins by 1 vote or 1 million votes. Unfortunately, this means a candidate can win the election without winning the most votes nationwide. Is the Electoral College good or bad for America?
The Electoral College is bad for America. The Electoral College gives too much power to swing states and allows the presidential election to be decided by a handful of states. The two main political parties can count on winning the electoral votes in certain states, such as California for the Democratic Party and Indiana for the Republican Party, without worrying much about the actual popular vote totals. Because of the Electoral College, presidential candidates only need to pay attention to a limited number of states that can swing one way or another. The Electoral College completely ignores the will of the people. There are over 300 million people in the United States, but just 538 people decide who will be president. In 2016, Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by more than 1 million votes, yet still lost the election on electoral votes. Even President Donald Trump, who benefited from the system, stated after the 2016 election that he believes the president should be chosen by popular vote. Quote unquote, "I would rather see it where you win with simple votes. You know, you get 100 million votes and somebody else gets 90 million votes and you win." Just as in 2000, when George W. Bush received fewer national-wide popular votes than Al Gore, Donald Trump will serve as the president of the United States despite being supported by fewer
All right, thank you. And with that, we're going to have a response from Julian Trejo. What's your take on if the Electoral College is good or bad for America?
Yeah, first, I would like to agree with Mrs. O'Neill that the Electoral College is bad for America because, look, we're a country of the people. In our own vision of democracy, the people are supposed to have the power, not the politicians. With the Electoral College, power goes to the politicians. They have the final say, not the people. And like she said, there was no better example of this than in the 2016 election. Hillary Clinton won the people's vote, the popular vote, but she lost to Donald Trump in the Electoral College, the politicians' vote. And because of that, the politicians and not the American people decided the election. That's not democracy. How can we go around the world conducting military coups and overthrowing entire governments in the name of liberty, justice, and democracy, yet not even live up to our own values and ideas about democracy?
And Ms. O'Neill, what's your response to that?
He is completely right. We are completely ignoring what everyone in the United States wants. We are all citizens here, and if we are not listening to each other and to the states and the will of the people, this isn't democracy. This isn't us actually trying. This is us doing what we want based on our politicians.
Mr. Trejo, is there anything else you would like to add to conclude this question?
No, I think we're both in agreement right now.
Alrighty, with that ends the question of the Electoral College. And moving on to the final question on this section of elections. The question will be posed to Janet Huerta. Many states allowed the majority party to draw new voting districts after each census. In some of these states, this allows the majority party to draw oddly shaped districts that are designed to guarantee their party wins certain races. This process is widely known as gerrymandering. Should changes be made in the process of redistricting? Why or why not?
I'm very confident in Arkansas's current redistricting process. In October 2018, Arkansas Attorney General Leslie Rutledge certified the ballot title for a proposal to revise the state's redistricting process, clearing the way for the petitioners to collect signatures. The proposed constitutional amendment would create a 7-member citizen commission to draw congressional and state legislative districts and prohibit drawing districts for partisan advantage to harm the voting strength of minority groups. To sum all of that up, I believe that there should be a fair redistricting process.
And now we're going to hear a response from Ms. O'Neill. What do you have to say about the redistricting?
So, eliminating gerrymandering would also make elections more expensive. Candidates don't campaign much in districts that heavily favor one party, but ending gerrymandering would make most districts competitive. Candidates of both parties will spend more on campaigning and advertising, meaning they will have to raise more money and please more special interests. Another consideration is congressmen from gerrymandered states are most likely to be reelected. Re-election means seniority, which means influence in the Congress. If Pennsylvania stops gerrymandering, but other states don't, then our congressmen will be at a disadvantage in the competition for federal contracts and money for highways, bridges, dams, and etc.
Ms. Huerta, do you have a response to Ms. O'Neill?
Yes, like I said, I agree that there should be some kind of prohibiting to drawing districts for partisan advantage. We don't want to harm the strength of voting in minority groups.
All right, and with that, that concludes our question of elections. Moving on to the next topic of immigration. The first question will be posed to Ms. O'Neill. There are about 11 million undocumented immigrants currently in the United States. Should these immigrants have a path to becoming U.S. citizens even though they entered the country illegally? Why or why not?
Yes, they should have a pathway to becoming a citizen. This country belongs to each and every citizen regardless of race, creed, nationality, origin, sexual orientation, gender identity, religious preference, etc. This American experiment was meant to forge a country where people are truly free from expression. Not only that, but a pathway to citizenship would keep families together, provide those seen as second-class individuals the opportunity to become U.S. citizens, and benefits our nation's economy. One of the many economic benefits from a pathway to citizenship is the end of shadow economy. Permitting immigrants to legally work would consequently increase the amount of taxes contributed to Social Security and benefits program. An estimated $2.1 billion in state and local tax revenue across the nation would be added to the economy. Additionally, a pathway to citizenship would encourage equal opportunity for workers, create business with higher wages, and reduce worker exploitation. America prides itself on being the land of the free and opportunities. But however, we are not giving opportunities to those who want to come to America. That is why they come illegally, because they cannot obtain a certain piece of paper that says someone can or can't be a citizen in the United States.
Alrighty, and now we're going to have a response from Janet Huerta on the question of the pathway to citizenship for these 11 million undocumented immigrants.
A pathway to citizenship for illegal immigrants is blanket amnesty. We cannot just forget and forgive those who have broken the law and then reward them. Rewarding lawbreakers by handing them the very thing they're after can only encourage more people to break the law. My party opposed providing a pathway to citizenship because you can't offer incentives for breaking the law without expecting more laws to be broken. It is common sense. When you reward a behavior, you get more of it. When you punish a behavior, you get less of it. If we want to solve America's problem with illegal immigration, we must punish those who break the law.
Ms. O'Neill, what do you have to say about Ms. Huerta's response?
What my opponent is stating is that we must punish those who break the law. If you think about it, why did they break the law? They broke the law because they didn't have a chance to get into America because of how strict the pathway to citizenship is. We all want equal opportunities. We all want the chance to start free in America without the feel of oppression.
And a final response from Ms. Huerta on this question.
I'd just like to say that there is a pathway that they can take, but they chose to go around it. Therefore, they did break the law. Thank you.
And now moving on to our next question in terms of immigration, the question will be posed to Janet Huerta. In 2017, the Trump administration introduced its zero-tolerance policy. Zero tolerance targeted and separated thousands of families seeking asylum in the United States. As border protection referred adults for protection while placing their children in DHS custody. Do you believe separating families has been good or bad for immigration policy, and why?
Like I said, if we want to solve America's problem with illegal immigration, then we must punish those who break the law. First and foremost, the separation of families at the border is not new. This has been done for decades. President Obama did this as well. Yes, there has been an increase in the number of people detained, and that is due to President Trump's zero-tolerance policy, which, may I add, this has declined the number of immigrants who are trying to enter the country illegally. This zero-tolerance policy applies to any adult, whether they bring their children or not.
Now we're going to hear a response on that from Julian Trejo.
You know, many people who support the zero-tolerance policy love to say that it deters illegal immigrants from crossing our borders, but I would tend to disagree. Think about it. Most of these migrants come from Central America and have to make the treacherous journey from their dangerous home country through Mexico, where they could be caught by the Mexican government and sent back, or even worse, become victims of narco violence, and then cross the 1,500-foot-long Rio Grande River to get into the U.S. They know the journey is going to be dangerous, and I can only imagine that for most parents from these countries, the opportunity for their children to be possibly put into DHS care or kept in the U.S., or even put in our broken foster care system, is all the motivation they need to make the journey time and time again. So overall, separating families at our border hasn't been a very effective immigration policy because people are going to keep doing it and doing it. Why?
Thank you, Mr.
Because-
Trejo. And now we're going to hear a response from Ms. Huerta on the original question posed.
It is not a secret. Everyone knows about our zero tolerance policy. My opponent agreed that the journey is very dangerous, and it's even more dangerous at the border. And they still bring their children. So really, if it's not a secret, everybody knows about our zero tolerance policy, and yet they still continue to come. Thank you.
Mr. Trejo, do you have any finishing remarks?
Exactly. Everybody does know about the zero tolerance policy, and they're still coming. So how can it be effective if people are still coming even with the policy? So obviously it's ineffective, and we shouldn't continue doing it.
Thank you. Now we're going to move on to our final question in terms of immigration. It will be posed to Julian Trejo. Many politicians have advocated abolishing immigration and customs enforcement, better known as ICE, which is a law enforcement agency responsible for combating cross-border crime and illegal immigration. These advocates say that other government agencies can handle these concerns without needing ICE. What is your position on the need for ICE to continue to exist, and why?
Well, according to the White House, the United States spent over $8 billion on ICE in 2019. Since 2010, the U.S. has spent over $70 billion to fund ICE. Could you imagine how many other things we could have spent $70 billion on? We could have given an extra $1 billion of funding to 70 other different things. We've increased spending on, we could have increased spending on infrastructure, allocated more funds to public schools. Hell, we could have even spent all that $70 billion on anything else but separating families at our border. But instead, what is the taxpaying Americans' hard-earned money funding? It's funding the separation of families at our border and the deportation of millions of people. This includes people who have lived in the U.S. their entire lives, people who had no idea they were born into a foreign country until ICE agents showed up at their door, threw them in the back of a van, and sent them to a country they have never known. ICE is deporting people who are as American as anybody watching this live stream. Think about that. What is the need for an organization like this to exist? If we truly are the land of the free, why are we deporting people and treating them like animals, keeping even children in cages and giving them lower quality food than prison food? We're forgetting that the backbone of this country was built by immigrants. Lest we forget, America has always been an idea, not an identity. It's time we start living up to that idea, and that starts by abolishing ICE.
And Ms. Haley O'Neill, what is your response to Julian Trejo's take on the necessity for ICE?
I would actually like to agree with Mr. Trejo's claim. There is absolutely no reason for us to keep ICE around. ICE was created in the panic days after the 9/11 to enhance national security, but its primary purpose has become hunting down and ejecting people whose main crime is often not being able to obtain a piece of paper that the government says they can or can't live here. Not only that, but children are being ripped away from their families. We can't just ignore that this is happening when there are children on the borders, in cages, acting like nothing is happening. ICE is not good for our country in the specific way of there's no need for it because America is free.
Is there anything else you'd like to add, Mr. Trejo?
No, sir.
Moving on to our final topic of discussion for this debate. The first question will be posed to Janet Huerta, and is it on the topic of education? For the bottom 50% of all U.S. households, college loan debt grew from about a quarter of average yearly income to nearly 3/5 between the mid-1990s and the mid-2010s. What options do we have as a country to reduce the burden of student loan debt on college graduates?
In response to the COVID pandemic, the Trump administration has enacted a temporary freeze on federal student loan repayment and interest changes through the end of the year. The Republican Party fully supports this decision. Congress passed the CARES Act, which provided multiple student loan benefits, including a student loan payment pause. If you want to continue to pay off your student loans, then you can during this period. During this period, no new interest will accrue on the federal loan balance.
And what is your response, Mr. Trejo, as to reducing the burden of student loan debt on Americans?
Look, the fact of the matter is we don't have any solid options in terms of reducing the burden of student loan on students. The problem has gotten way out of control. Combined, students are in over $1.4 trillion in debt. Yes, I said trillion with a T. The average college graduate is likely to owe $37,000, and over 2 million people owe over $100,000 each. There's no feasible solution for the government to raise enough money to pay off that debt for its citizens. So for people in debt right now, there's nothing we can really do to help them other than to maybe cancel the interest they have and make them pay for the debt as it is, or maybe the government can somehow find a way to pay for a certain percentage of the debt.
And with that, we're going to move on to our next question that's going to be posed to Ms. Haley O'Neill. If debt was canceled, are there ways to compensate those who struggled but ultimately paid off their student loans and would not see any relief from this new policy? Should that be a priority?
The policy regarding student debt forgiveness, or rather student debt cancellation, is a policy that looks great on paper and at first glance, but anyone who actually reviews this policy plan can see that it is highly impractical and can serve as a financial burden to the very people the plan proposes to help. However, we are not talking about that. We are talking if the debt was canceled. Some ways that they could see relief from this new policy is in terms of income tax credit. The Earned Income Tax Credit is a benefit for working people with low to moderate income. To qualify, you must meet certain requirements and file a tax return. Even if you don't owe any tax or are not required to file, it reduces the amount of tax you owe and may give you a refund. Payers of student loan debt eligible for income tax credit equal to the amount of student debt that is canceled. Example, if $50,000 are canceled from student loan debt, students who paid off debt are eligible for up to $50,000 in income tax, as well as a stimulus check. Former students who paid off student debt eligible for stimulus check with their student loan payments.
Ms. Huerta, on the same question, what is your take?
Well, first of all, I don't think that student debt should be canceled. However, it was a simpler time. Before social distancing, hospitals overflowing with coronavirus patients. In the past few months, the world has changed. And I don't believe that finding a way to compensate those who paid their debt, who, may I add, did what they're supposed to do, should be our priority.
Ms. O'Neill, would you like to respond to that?
No, sir.
Moving on to our final question of the debate on the topic of education, will be posed to Julian Trejo. The Obama administration suggested making tuition at community colleges free, but other candidates, such as Bernie Sanders, have advocated for making all public colleges, including four-year universities, tuition free. Do you think tuition-free college is a good idea that the U.S. can make fiscally possible?
We all want an opportunity to further our education in order to receive a better job or career in the future. And in truth, every American should be afforded the right to higher education at no cost. However, in reality, paying for every single American to attend a public four-year college is just completely unrealistic. We'd be talking about trillions upon trillions of dollars to fund something like that. And no amount of taxes on billionaires is going to be able to pay for that. So instead, I propose that we scrap the ACT and other college admissions exams and instead create a set of guidelines that would determine whether or not a person would be eligible to take part in a government program to attend a four-year public college of their choice completely free of cost. I say we should scrap the ACT because we all know people who are absolutely brilliant who did not go to college, people who got low ACT scores but are doing tremendous things in life. I mean, some of the top tech developers in the world didn't even go to college. The ACT and other tests like it should not even be considered when questioning whether or not a student would be eligible for the program. I suggest that we create guidelines in order to be eligible to have your college paid for, because in reality, there's no point in the government spending thousands of dollars on a person's college tuition when the person in question is just totally uninterested and they're just going because it's free. So yes, we should have tuition-free college paid for by the government, but only for select students who are eligible for it.
And now a response from Ms. Haley O'Neill.
Tuition-free college isn't exactly an option when it comes to college. The main reason for this is because colleges are run off of selfish business models. Asking for tuition-free is a little much. Rather, let's look at alternatives. A student in college pays 12% of their income for 12 years. The reason this works is because tuition on average takes 70 to 90% of student incomes. Doing a 12-year spread out not only lets the students save anywhere from 1 to 88% of their money, it also still gets the college the money it wants, but more controlled into the student's liking. When you go to college, the university is investing in you, but as of 2020, students have to invest into the school.
And now a response from Mr. Trejo.
Yeah, I would agree that most colleges are like business models, but that doesn't mean that we should not make tuition-free college. I think it could be possible, but like I said, don't give the check to the people, give it to the government, and not for everybody, but just for certain people who are eligible and would make good use of that college degree.
Ms. O'Neill, do you have a response?
No, sir.
And with that, we conclude our mock presidential debate. I'd like to thank all the candidates for their responses, as well as all you listeners for tuning in. Thank you very much.